All right, so we did our project about climate change. Our grade that we focused on was first grade, and the audience was family. So we thought it would be a good idea to have their final project about they create a poster and then they can show their families. When their family comes into the classroom, they can show their families their poster board about climate change. So the two ML students in our classroom, one is Omar, he is level 1. So he understands some English, but he is still working on his English. He doesn't know that many words related to climate change, but he knows words in his own language about climate change that he can bring into the classroom. And then we have a level 3 student developing. Her name is Sarah. She knows some climate change words in English, and she's pretty good with English. She can help Omar develop his English further, but she still is trying to figure out the definitions of each vocabulary word. So she's still struggling with that a little bit. So for our first session, we did introduction to climate change, and we're going to introduce the assignment. So I thought it would be a good idea to read a story of climate change by Steve Williams so that they can get a little glimpse of what it is before we actually start talking about it. And then I'm going to give them an example of the final project so that they know like what I am expecting of them to do. And I'll make sure I give them clear instructions about the final project as well. So that's kind of what the first session is about. The second session, we're going to teach them vocabulary words about climate change and the environment. So like I said before, ML students may know these vocabulary words in their own language, but we want to introduce them in English, such as pollution, global warming, and recycling. And I can help them by showing images of each word, such as like pollution for trash and a recycling bin for recycle, stuff like that. And the students will discuss with one another where they heard these words before. So that's like an activity you can do, or you can put these words on a word wall so that they can use these in their final project, and they can refer to these words back again. In the third session, we're going to talk about climate change and weather. So they'll know the difference between climate change and weather, and we actually did one of our units or one of our lesson plans on this one as well. So like I'll teach them terms like weather. I'm going to reteach them climate because I want them to get that word stuck in their head as well as the definition so that they know what that word means, because it's a huge part of climate change. So I want them to know that word. I'm going to use visuals for the MLs to help them. They'll talk about with their partners about the weather they experience daily and the climate they experience daily. That's one of the activities that they will do. In session 4, we're going to talk about what can happen over time if the attention to the environment and climate change is not paid attention to. I think this is a really good point to make because they need to know what happens if we do not take care of our environment, and climate change is a huge factor. So I think this is an important part, and I can show images of environmental problems and ask students what they think will happen if we ignore climate change. And they had an activity where they had to write a short sentence about what they think will happen if we ignore climate change. And we talked about natural disasters and that too. So that was another lesson plan that we created on. And then our 5th session was thinking about ways to help the earth. I think this was a great step forward. After talking about natural disasters, we can think about on the positive side now. And we'll have a class discussion of ways they can help the planet. And I'm going to use sentence starters. I can help blank, or I will help blank. A lot of these sessions that I'm talking about, sentence starters are a huge factor, especially for ML students, because it will help them learn faster. For session 6, I'm going to talk about writing about ways you can help with climate change, developing in what we came up with in session 5. So it's taking a step further. And I'm going to have students share their ideas with a partner about ways we can help climate change. And again, I'll provide sentence starters for those ML students in my classroom. And then session 7 is actually starting their poster. They will be creating a layout of the poster and thinking about all the ideas that we've talked about. And I'll teach them terms like layout, title, center, and border so that they know what a poster looks like, and I can reassure them what I'm expecting of them to do again. And I expect them to use complete sentences to describe their designs.
For session 8, we would research and finalize ideas for the poster. So an activity we would do is students would explain their poster ideas to the teacher, and such as I will draw a tree to show how trees help the earth. We'd use sentence frames for students to explain their visual and written content. So on my poster, I will show blank because of blank. And students would begin to add written content to their posters explaining their actions to help reduce climate change. For session 9, we would be designing the poster. An activity could be students would begin drawing their posters using the facts and ideas they researched, and the students would also begin drawing their posters using the facts and ideas that they researched, and the students would begin writing sentences on their poster board to explain their design and ideas. Planting trees help reduce pollution. Session 10, the poster peer review. Students would revise their posters for clarity and accuracy, and students will give and receive feedback on their posters. For session 11, the final edits and changes to the poster. So they would make final changes, and they would describe the edits they made. For session 12, preparing for their presentation by organizing their thoughts and their ideas and rehearsing their poster. And session 13, rehearsing the presentation. They would prepare what they're going to explain for their posters. And session 14, this is when they would present. So the students will invite their families to come into the classroom, where they would share their posters with their families, and the students will explain their solution for climate change and show the important elements of the poster board. And once they've finished as a class, we will have one last celebration to recognize their work. By doing this, they will share one thing they had learned about our environment, or they would share their solution to climate change with the rest of the class.
So like I had said before, our first lesson plan was about session 3, which was the difference between climate change and weather. So knowledge of students, they know already what climate is from the previous session that we have talked about. The level 1 student may only understand some vocabulary words about weather or climate from conversations in other classes or at home, because since this is session 3, they don't know that many words yet. So like it's kind of hard for them to describe the difference between them two. And then level 3 student can understand and communicate basic ideas. A few of our assessments are going to be thumbs up, thumbs down, sideways. Teacher will check in with each student to ensure they are understanding the 3 vocabulary words: temperature, climate, weather, that will be taught during this session. Check, so when students are done with the Venn diagram that I will describe later, they must bring the worksheet to the student or to the teacher to be checked that it is accurate and completed. And then observe. The teacher will walk around and listen to each group's conversation about weather and climate to monitor appropriate social and classroom behavior. So below level, like you want to pair them up with a high level student, and you can meet with them before they do the Venn diagram worksheet to see if they actually understand the difference between the 2 words. For a high level, you can encourage the high level thinking, and after they finish the worksheet, maybe have them think of real world examples of weather and climate change. For MLs, level 1 and 3, use visual aids as much as possible to explain vocabulary, as it is hard for them. You can use sentence frames for them too, provide additional time. For WIDA level 1 student, use simplified sentence frames. For the level 3 student, challenge the student with additional questions or sentence that requires more thinking about weather and climate. So how I'm going to engage them was write weather on the whiteboard and climate written down, and like when they walk in, they have to like put 1 word down that describes the words. So that's how I would start off the class period. And then go into activity 1. The teacher would describe what temperature, climate, and weather are on the whiteboard, and she will put up images of each word on the projector and ask the student what each word means when looking at the picture. And then she'll show the actual definition by looking it up on the kids' dictionary. And let's see, and that is pretty much it and she'll show them how to write a sentence frame so that they understand what that is. And then in activity 2, she's gonna split them up and have them try a sentence frame like the weather is blank today, and in my area the climate is blank, so they'll have to fill that in orally. And if students are having a hard time with that, they can write it if they need to. So we'll give students enough time to practice this with their partners, and they'll switch partners up a few times to understand where everyone is coming from. And then in activity 3, they'll do the Venn diagram, as I had mentioned before. I'm going to explain to them what a Venn diagram is at first so that they understand it. And they'll have climate and weather on each side, and they're going to have to like find the differences on a website. So they'll use their iPads, and then they have to find the similarities. So that's pretty much it for activity 3. And then for closing, and like I'll just ask them what is one takeaway from this class, and what can you apply it in your project, and I'll have a few students answer. And for the assignment, students that did not finish the worksheet in class will need to bring it home and bring it back the next day for me to check it.
Okay, for the second one, we did session 4, and the focus is what if we ignore climate change, then what would happen? For the level 3 students, the knowledge of vocabulary words about natural disaster, and for the level 1, they may know a few words about natural disaster. For the assessments, one would be a worksheet, and students will write about what happens if we ignore climate change and draw a picture. For the second assessment, we would have a discussion and the teacher would lead an informal discussion about the definitions of the words. For the third assessment, it would be observation and the teacher would walk around the classroom to observe and make sure the students are working well with others and stay on task. And for accommodations, we would use bilingual dictionaries for students on level 1 and allow extended time. We'd also pair them up with a student who is higher level. For level 3, provide higher level vocabulary words and have sentence starters and visual supports. For modifications, the level 1 student will write one sentence but may use a device to type it, and the level 3 will explore additional vocabulary. So to start off, the teacher would have a picture of a natural disaster projected on the screen and instruct the class to come up to the whiteboard and write one word about what they see in the picture. For activity 1, before they break off into pairs, the teacher would go over what they're looking for so they're on the same page, and would give them a sheet that has 3 words about natural disasters, flooding, and drought, and the students would use the dictionary and find the correct definition, and then they would go over it as a class. The teacher would give them an example of how to find a word in the dictionary, and once they found the example, they would show them. And for activity 2, remind the students that they are finding the definitions and writing them down, and the teacher will walk around and observe how they are interacting with their peers, as well as providing feedback. If the group finishes before others, have them research other natural disaster terms and write them down, and briefly go over the answers as a class and call on students to read their answers. After they practice finding definitions and discussing the natural disasters, the students would continue to work independently on the next task, where they would apply what they learned. For activity 3, instruct them to quietly head back to their seats, and the teacher would tell them to now write 2 to 3 sentences about what they think will happen if we ignore climate change and draw a picture. And then the teacher would say, so how did learning about natural disasters teach you about ignoring climate change? And you would think about this while you think of an answer. And if students are struggling with this activity, have sentence starters ready for them to use, and then give the students about 15 minutes to do this activity. And then the students would bring their papers up for the teacher to review and see if it's completed. And then the teacher would ask before they end, what is one key takeaway from today? Then the assignment would be, if students did not finish the worksheet that they did in class, have them bring it home and check it the next day to make sure it is completed.
Okay, so I know we're over time here, but I just wanted to point out that the activities that are included in this unit were thoughtfully selected to align with both the content and language objectives, ensuring that students could be engaged in both learning and developing their language skills. I find it very important as an educator to build a unit that MLs can be included in. We just have to figure out different activities where they can be involved, because I know it's hard as a multilingual learner coming into a new classroom and not knowing English really that hard like Omar. So I think it's important that we need to build from the base and help students learn English through different activities, whether that is peer work or teaching them vocabulary and helping them find definitions in the dictionary. I think that one of the challenging steps in this process of making this unit planning was finding the objective assessment and the standard all aligning together as one. I think that was a big issue, but it eventually worked out at the end. And overall, this unit was really, it helped me develop teaching better, because now I can plan on writing a unit with multilingual learners.